hereby call the Standing Committee of Finance to order for Tuesday, February 22nd. Madam Clerk, item number 1.
Appointment of Michelle Yaffe of Brockton, Mass. 02301 as parking clerk for the City of Brockton. Invited Michelle Yaffe.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
I was recently promoted to the paralegal position in the law department. I've been employed with the city for 20 years. Part of that job description is parking clerk for the City of Brockton.
Move to recommend favor.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll have a final vote next week.
Michelle.
Congratulations.
Appointment of Mary James of Brockton to the...
Councilor D'Agostino, you got a moment?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as most in the community know, one of our firefighters, Lieutenant Michael Mahoney, passed away unexpectedly recently. He was also a Ward 3 resident and a 25-year veteran of our fire department. And so I'd like to ask that everybody join us in a moment of silence at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Appointment of Mary James of Brockton to the Council on Aging for a 3-year term ending February 2025. Invited Mary James.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilor.
I spoke with Ms. James, and she's been before us before, so this is just a reappointment, and so I motion to recommend this favorably back to the full City Council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? All right, motion passes.
Let the woman speak.
Thank you.
She didn't want to.
Appointment of Attorney Shannon Resnick of Hull to the position of Legislative Counsel to the City Council for a 2-year term ending in February 2024. Invited Shannon Resnick.
Councilors, if there are no objections, I believe Clerk Cruz would like to speak on this matter as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let the councilors know and the public the reason this was put in right now. The ordinance that I've dropped a copy off to all of you is that there shall be a legislative counsel who should be appointed by the second Monday in February. We haven't done this for the last couple of years since Attorney Gilday left, but that is what the ordinance reads, and it doesn't say may, it says shall. So I just wanted to let the public know the timing of this, and now let's talk to Attorney Resnick. Thank you.
Good evening. I know most of you have worked with me for a few years now, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about myself and then a little bit about what I do as the Legislative Counsel for the city. I graduated from UMass Law in 2014, summa cum laude with highest honors. I was the managing editor of the Law Review. And then upon graduation, I joined two different general practices. About 5 years ago, I began operating my own law office. I became the Legislative Counsel for the City of Brockton in 2017, so I've been with you for almost 5 years now. In addition to working for the city, I also have municipal law experience. I am also the Legislative Counsel for the Plymouth County Commissioners, and I've worked for the town of Bridgewater as well. And in my private practice, I am a trial attorney. I have extensive civil litigation experience. I do closings, real estate transactions, estate law, some divorce law. I try and be as much of a general practitioner as I can be. The city ordinances provides that the city council does get to have its own legislative council. The duties include assisting and advising the council and committees, assisting in drafting legislation, which includes ordinances, orders, and resolutions, attend city council meetings, and I can advise on proposed changes to ordinances, and I can recommend repeals of ordinances as well. So I sit on the Public Safety Committee. I take the notes, I take the minutes, and I do that as well for the Ordinance Committee. But I think most of you understand what my role is. I have defended the city in lawsuits, in open meeting law complaints, and I also sometimes get involved with state ethics questions, conflict of interest questions, and public records requests. I'm not a political position. I'm not a resident of the city. I don't have a business here. I don't, when I ask whether or not the council can do it, I'm providing you legal advice on whether or not you can do it, not whether or not you should do it. And that's kind of what my function is as legislative counsel.
Motion to recommend favorable.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none, the motion
you.
passes.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Council.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $51,480 from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, MEMA, Emergency Management Performance Grant, to the Brockton Emergency Management Agency, Emergency Management Performance Grant Fund. These grant funds will be used to purchase a 2022 Polaris Ranger UTV for Fire Department, flashlights, and radio equipment. This grant does not require a match. Invited Stephen Hook, Director of Emergency Management, and Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Mr. Director?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, councilors, new councilors, welcome. So this is a grant that we get every year. I'm happy to report, Councilor Rodriguez will like this, that this grant actually increased this year because of our increase in population. So we did get a significant increase in this grant. This year, we're going to buy some radio equipment, but the majority of the grant is going to go to an all-terrain vehicle for the fire department, and they can use as they see fit. It's going to have a fire pump on the back that they can take off-road to put out fires. They can take the pump off and put other equipment in the back. So there's no match to this. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Director.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $50,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Fire Services fiscal year 2022 Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant to the Brockton Fire Department fiscal 2022 Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant Fund. These grant funds will be used to purchase a thermal imaging camera. This grant does not require a match. Invited Brian Nardelli, Fire Chief or Designate, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. President. Thank you, councilors. Thank you, Councilor D'Agostino, and the rest of you for your support. Lieutenant Michael Mahoney was a tremendous individual, and we appreciate your support in mourning with us for him. I'd like to thank, real quick, Director Hook. We've worked collaboratively on that last piece that he just put forward, and it's great to have partners we can work with in the city to get things done and work together. To speak on this grant, we have not put in for this in the past. This was one that they had sidelined for a little while. This year it came up and we actually received $50,000 in this grant, which was us. We were one of the only fire departments to receive that number. Us, New Bedford, Lynn, and Quincy received approximately $50,000. Most of them were in the teens. So I was very happy to see that. What this does is this allows us to buy thermal imaging cameras in replacement of. We have plenty of them now, but technology changes over the years. The last ones that were purchased were back in 2013, and they're getting to the end of their life expectancy. We did have a plan, but this actually makes it move a little bit faster for us. So we actually be able to purchase new thermal imaging cameras for each piece of apparatus in the city. These pieces of equipment assist us in seeing through smoke in different environments. We use them all the time, not just for fires, but for other incidents such as hazardous materials and different things of that nature. So this is a very useful piece of equipment. There is no match with this, which is even better. So this will be straight from the state.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, councilors.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $275,000 from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security fiscal 2022 Municipal Services Staffing Grant to the Brockton Police Department fiscal 2022 Municipal Services Staffing Grant Fund. These grant funds will be used to pay overtime wages for patrol shift minimum staffing, shift overruns, detective investigations, restraining order service, training, community police activities, etc. This grant does not require a match. Invited Steve Williamson, Interim Chief of Police, Michelle St. James, Grant Coordinator, Brockton Police Department, and Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, Chief. Good evening, Ms. St. James.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, councilors. This is a grant we've gotten for many years. It's only open to a select number of cities in Massachusetts. We're very grateful for it because it allows us, A, to keep minimum staffing on the streets, and also to do some community service we wouldn't be able to do without it.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
To have Plymouth County District Attorney Timothy Cruz present before the Brockton City Council an update on crime statistics in Brockton and what his office has been doing to address crime in the city, as well as the programs offered through the DA's office, such as the Safe Streets meetings and programs for our youth. Invited Timothy Cruz, Plymouth County District Attorney.
Good evening, Mr. District Attorney.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, councilors. It's great to be here this evening. I'll just let them get set up with some of the stuff, which I believe everybody should be provided a copy of what we're putting up here tonight.
Thank you for the folders with the information.
Well, thank you for asking me, Councilor Razak. We were speaking at the Martin Luther King breakfast, and we talked briefly about some of the numbers that we were dealing with here in the city, and she thought it would be important for me to come here today and just address what we've been doing, and we expanded it. So basically, we've been talking about lots of things we've been doing here in the city and also in the county of Plymouth, because you can't, as Plymouth County DA, we continue to work here in the city of Brockton, but we also work with the 26 other communities, and many times, fortunately, it goes hand in hand. And I think that, you know, what we've been trying to do here since I've been DA is trying to look at and engaging our community partners in building a very healthy and very resilient community. And I think we've been successful in doing that over the course of the years. Trying to help kids stay away from alcohol, drugs, even sexting, which is such a big issue right now, and all the issues that they're dealing with, and at the same time dealing with people who are dealing with mental health issues, drug issues. As we all know, unfortunately, the criminal justice system many times is the depository of society's problems, and they end up in a system that's ill-suited to deal with many issues that they're dealing with. So we've been transforming, I think, the criminal justice system, dealing with specialty courts, drug courts, mental health courts, veterans courts, trying to deal with those issues, and at the same time trying to be in the front end of problems and also helping people on the back end, the reentry back into society. Being smart on public safety includes targeting violent people and human and drug traffickers who do much damage to the fabric of the people here in the community where we live. And that means accountability for individuals who harm, and making sure that we can heal people who have been victimized, and at the same time work together as a community to try to prevent future harms and also trying to repair the past injuries that are out there. So as DA, I provide resources. We try to build community partnerships, prosecute crime, all the while trying to make Plymouth County stronger, healthier, and safer. And although we spend the majority of our time in the courtroom, we understand and we recognize that we have a broader duty to try to prevent cycles of violence, to try to ensure that individuals return to our communities when they enter a successful reentry program. Our office takes care to be present in the community. I'm the district attorney. I'm a lawyer. I am not a doctor. I'm not an educator. I am not a social worker. But in my role as district attorney, I can facilitate partnerships that we can use holistic responses to deal with crime, to keep people safer, to keep our numbers down. We have to use our position in the community and our resources, including financial, to support our community partnerships. And together, I think, with our partners, I think we've been able to make a difference. So I could go back in time and talk about programs that we dealt with many years ago, Weed and Seed, Project Safe Neighborhood, and you may hear of a little of those as I go on with the issues that we're dealing with. But I just want to go back and you look at the numbers here on the charts that were put together that I provided. We're back to 2015, which is the beginning of Safe Streets. And for those of us that were here and living in the city at that time and working in the city at that time, 2015 was a very violent year. and it was necessary that we reenact and put things back together to make sure that we hold people accountable who are picking up crime guns, who are people who are bringing and hurting people in our community, and making sure that we can do everything that we can. So, you know, as we proceed and do what we do here, we also have faced many of the same challenges you've faced, whether it be COVID. You know, 2020 brought challenges to us that we've never had before. And whether it be trial courts opening, trial courts closing, trying to make sure we can do our job, working in conjunction with our local police, our state partners, our federal partners. So when you look at the charts that we provided here today and you look at the numbers, I think the numbers tell a tale. And they go back for 7 years in some instances, 10 years in others. And you look at the numbers here in the city of Brockton, and that's what we focused on. And the numbers up there, as you can see, they're from the FBI statistics that they receive numbers from the Brockton police. They go into the universal recording data, and that's how they come out. So they're not my numbers. And looking at our numbers as the crime has gone down, and at the same time, when you look at the other numbers regarding the people that are in custody, and that's going down also. So the people, when you look at our numbers from the House of Correction, that the numbers back in 2010, when there was roughly 600 people or so doing time at the Plymouth County House of Correction, today we have 79. We have other people being held on bail, we have other people being held federally, but people actually doing time in the House of Correction down in Plymouth is 79. And at the same time, in the Department of Correction, which the Department of Correction houses individuals who are charged with the most serious crimes, homicides, rapes, child trafficking, sex trafficking, things such as that, drug trafficking. Those numbers are also significantly down. I believe the numbers are, and I'm not good with math, so excuse my if I slip up, I believe our numbers are down of incarcerated individuals in the Plymouth County House of Corrections since 2010, they're down 65%. Our numbers are down 65%, and at the same time, we watch as our numbers go down for violent crime, and the violent crime is also endorsed up there in those documents. So you have the FBI numbers up top, you have numbers here which we extrapolated from the Project Safe Neighborhood grant, the current one that we're dealing with. Project Safe Neighborhood unfortunately went away due to lack of funding from the federal level years back. That's why Safe Streets came together. Because when there was a problem, we were able to reach out to the people here in our county and make sure that we could bring them together. So whether it be faith-based, whether it be city councilors, whether it be legislators, trying to bring everybody together, how can we deal with this violence that happened? And so by bringing Safe Streets together, that means bringing our law enforcement partners together, state, federal, local, sitting around at the table, talking about the individuals who are causing problems in our community. Because what we find, I think, is what we find virtually everywhere, that the vast majority of crime is done by a very small group of individuals. And that if you target those individuals, you're going to see your numbers go down. And that's been the ceasefire operation that we've been doing for the last 7 or 8 years or so, back when Safe Streets began. So at the same time, you know, my job has broadened over the years, in that it's no longer just, when I was a young lawyer and I was working as an intern in Bill O'Malley's DA's office back in 1984, we just had a file and a police report. We didn't know anything about anybody. And now, as we progressed over time, and we're allowed to now have more conversations regarding people, we have community-based juvenile justice meetings where we can actually sit around and talk about young men and young women who are facing challenges in their lives, whether they come from broken homes, whether they have drug issues, whether they need a job, and they need somebody in their life. And what I found out when I was going to schools many years back, when we were dealing with ceasefire issues, and we were dealing with a lot of kids who really came from broken homes, and they need help. And they have a very lack of caring, a lot of these guys and gals. But what I found out, and just dealing with other people, is that they do care about something. They cared about their younger brothers, they cared about their younger sisters, they cared about the people in their family, and they didn't want to see them enter the same cycles that they've entered. So by putting these programs together that we have, and all these programs that we've been dealing with over the course of the last 20 years here in the city, I think it's so incredibly important for us to now to try to break these cycles of domestic violence, break these cycles of child abuse, break all the cycles that we're dealing with. How do we do that? Obviously, something's working here, and nobody, I don't think, ever said to you, it's working because of this, or it's working because of that. It's working because of everything. It's working because of people who are working together. And dealing with children nowadays, children who are dealing with adverse childhood experiences. And we actually have a program here that came out of Brockton. And now it's kind of a nationwide program. And it came all because we got a call one day. Eddie Jacobs, who many of you I know, I'm sure, worked in my office for many years. He's retired now. But Eddie called me up one day and said, we had a terrible case here in the city of Brockton where some drug dealers went to rob another group of drug dealers. and they went to a multifamily building here in the city, and they kicked the second floor door in, and they went in there to rob drug dealers. Well, they went to the wrong door. The people they wanted to rob were on the third floor. They went to the second floor. On the second floor was a mom and 3 kids. And they went in, and they pushed the mom down, and they hit the mom, and when the 12-year-old boy that was there tried to protect his mom, he was pushed to the side. The very next day, police show up, drug dealers are gone. The very next day, those kids get up, and where do they go? They go to school. And when you're 12 years old, and you're 10 years old, and you're 8 years old, you think that the whole world knows your world. And what happens when you're a kid and you have that very traumatic event like that, and you walk into school, and nobody says anything? Nobody's talking. Nobody knows. So we started dealing with a program back in 2007, of which we didn't really have a name for it per se, but it has morphed in what's known as Handle with Care, and all it really is because of privileges, you can't say what happens, but if something happens in a young child's life that the police are involved, they notify the school, and all they say is, handle Johnny with care. And they watch that kid. And so what we've been doing is trying to make all of our schools in our county trauma sensitive, trying to help those kids, trying to make sure we can break those cycles of child abuse, domestic violence, whether it be through that or some other way. And that has now morphed into a pretty big deal, quite honestly, across the nation. Handle with Care has taken off. We have Handle with Care now out of here in Massachusetts. Many different counties in Massachusetts are up and running with it. And we've morphed that into Children Who Witness Violence by bringing in people from the Trauma Learning Policy Initiative from Boston, which is dealing with Harvard Law School, dealing with mass advocates, all these great groups, going to the schools, not just talking to the teachers, but also to the custodians, the people that are seeing these kids. And we saw our numbers here in the city of Brockton. We did it in 3 pilot schools. We saw our numbers go down to one of the schools by 80% of suspendable offenses that occurred during that time period. Something's working. And then as we proceed forward, and we deal with the next set of issues, because we're dealing with Children Who Witness Violence, we're dealing with Handle with Care. What's the next step? Opioids pop up. And now all of a sudden you have kids who are seeing their moms, their dads, their brothers and sisters dying from this terrible drug, this terrible disease that's out there. And these kids are also going to school. How do you help those kids? Because the more things that they see, the more trauma they have in their life, they're going to have the adverse childhood experiences. They're going to be the kids who are the next people going to be having drug problems. How do you help them? So we've now taken what we've learned from Children Who Witness Violence, we applied it to the opioids. We developed the Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force here in the county of Plymouth, of which has spun off, and I apologize if I'm talking too fast. I always talk fast. I get yelled at by stenos all the time when I'm trying cases, because that's the way that I talk. And I'm passionate about what we say because I think it's making a difference. And as we go, and if I say something that you can't recall, whatever, please, PlymouthDA.com. Everything I'm saying is on there. And so as we go forward, as we've changed that from the opioid crisis, and we're dealing now with kids who are dealing and watching that, we've morphed that, and we're still going to schools right now. I think we have 10 schools in Plymouth County that I would deem to be trauma sensitive. We're going to make sure that we help those kids so that the schools know what to look for and get those kids the resources they can. And if they can't help them, send them to somebody that can help them. What do you look for? At the same time, we've been dealing with many different things. Our reentry programs here with Sheriff McDonald, the individuals, the vast majority of the people that are going to the House of Correction, those individuals are coming back to our community. A lot of these men need help. They need help getting a job. They need help getting a license. They need help getting education. They need help with anger management. They need help with parenting skills. They have a lot of those programs down there right now, and you people were good enough to allow the sheriff to have an office here. Jim Frazier, who works for the sheriffs, is here. So people don't have to go back once you're out of jail. You don't have to go back down to Plymouth. You can come right here, and you can get the help that you need. So I appreciate you all working with that, because I think it's made a difference. We've been dealing with many things, including dealing with the police departments that have been, and Brockton has been an incredible partner. You should all know that. Brockton police work incredibly well with the state police. They work incredibly well with our federal partners, DEA, ATF, FBI. Another big part as to why the numbers are what they are. But going back to the drug issues, back before it was declared a crisis here in Massachusetts, we had already been taking monies and providing Naxalon to get it out to the first responders back when it was really expensive, and we were able to help them with that. We continue to work now with, like I said, decade drug-endangered children, those kids who are the next level, those kids who are seeing their parents overdosing, and I think we all know somebody who's dealing with this terrible disease. We also know somebody who probably has either passed or they're gone, and the grandparents are trying to take over for the kids. And when you talk to grandparents at our Council on Aging, they're really at their wits' end. They really need help. How do you help those kids? And that, to me, is really important that we continue to focus on that. One of the big issues that we're dealing with is the Plymouth County Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, which we get a $1.5 million grant, and we're partnering with Health Imperatives here in the city of Brockton, making sure that we can bolster our efforts and our resources and trying to train people what to look for. You know, one of the best things we've done, in my opinion, in my 20 years, has been finally the development of a children's advocacy center, which is right here in the city of Brockton, trying to help the kids who are sexually molested, the kids who are hurt, the kids who are coming from broken homes. How do you help them? Those kids need help more than anybody. And those are the kids that if you don't help them and get them resources and put them in a multidisciplinary response like we have at CAC, those individuals could very well, who are victims today, can become perpetrators later on. Even if we can't go forward with our cases, it's important that those kids get the help that they need to stop that cycle. So on any given year, we have maybe 1,000 cases that go through. Last year at our CAC, we had roughly 1,000 cases, although only 700 were able to go forward. Many times, no criminal prosecutions come from these because the children are too small, they can't testify, it's not good for their mental health to go forward. But we also have been dealing with commercial sexual exploitation of children and going out and training people regarding what's going on here, what to look for, teachers and police when they go out. And although, you know, I think many times training and education is a great thing, and what we ended up seeing was our numbers spiked for our CSEC cases, the commercial sexual exploitation of children. I think a lot of that was because, not because there was any more of them, but because people knew what to look for, and people knew how they could put themselves in a position to help these kids. So the CAC has really been a godsend for us. And back when I started out as DA, we were in the annex across the street. When we were at 32 Belmont across the street, we were over there. And we were doing it in one of our rooms, and it just didn't work. And it was really important that we partner up with somebody here. I had a PowerPoint presentation. I went to Brockton Hospital at the time. I went to Good Sam. I went to anybody that I could try to find a place that we could house this place. And I don't blame the hospitals at all because they didn't have the room. Room is really of a premium in the hospitals. What we were able to do is we partnered up with BAMSI, and they purchased a house over there on Pleasant Street. And that's our CAC, and that's where we have our sexual assault investigative nurses come and deal with the children who need the help the most. And it just, once again, goes to show you the things that can happen when people work together. You know, we've got numerous diversion programs, and diversion is a big thing that's talked about. Now, diversion is nothing new. It's been in Brockton for 40 years. And now, as we've changed it and gone forward with it, and I think diversion also is something that you see many times if something happens at school. A school may just take care of that themselves. They may not even send it to their SRO. They might send it to the next line. So I think there's very levels of diversion before we even get involved with it. And then when we do, for nonviolent offenders, we need to make sure that these kids don't get Corys because it affects their lives. The arraignment affects their lives. The arraignment will be on their record, even a juvenile record, so that even though people can't get at to look at it, when you're applying for your college, say, and you have to fill out these applications, they're asking those very serious questions. So how do you help kids and get them the resources that they need so that we're not dealing with them later on? Kids that made a mistake, something stupid. How can we help them? How do we keep them out of the system? That's the best way that we can continue to do, I think, our job. And right now, Brockton has been selected, Brockton District Court has been selected as one of the two pilot programs this year. One or two sites, there's us and there's Worcester, implement a new screening mechanism in a drug diversion program, and prior to a clerk issuing a complaint for a summons arraignment, we're able to identify candidates for diversion, including those who might be suffering from substance abuse disorders. So hopefully we can partner them with clinicians, and we keep them out of the system, get them the help that they need, and at the same time, we also have our drug courts, where people are going into drug courts, there's tough love over there. And sometimes people that are in the drug courts will go to jail, and sometimes that's the best thing for them. And they come out because they don't want to go. When they come out, they want to make sure they don't go down that path, because the path right now is fraught with peril. Opioids, oxys. Now we've got new opiates that are out there because heroin is nothing new. When I was a young prosecutor back in the 80s, we actually used to get drug certificates from cases where they designated the purity of the drugs back then. They don't do that anymore. But you would see back then drugs, opioids, heroin here in Brockton was 15% pure, 20% pure. They put inositol, they put other cut in there, they get more from less. The heroin that's out there now is incredibly pure. and it's 90% pure. And you're talking also now with fentanyl and carfentanil, and you read terrible stories every day about people who are lacing marijuana with fentanyl and kids that are overdosing as a result of that because they have no idea. And although I can't say the names, I cannot pronounce them, there are new opioids coming that are more powerful than fentanyl. And I'm very concerned about that. That's coming at us next. It's down in Washington, D.C. right now. So, you know, we continue to do the very best that we can here in the city. And as you can see also, all these grants that we've had over the years. The thing that I'm proudest about the grants, the $22.9 million that were brought back to our county, is we don't take any administrative fees whatsoever. We let that run through. So any grant, normally you can take a 10% fee. We always make sure that that money goes back into the community, goes back into the grant. I think that's made a difference for us. And I know I'm going on a while, and I apologize for that, but you know, as the DA now, it's different than what it was back in the 80s and the 90s. Now you have to have one foot in the courtroom, and you have to have one foot out in the real world, and you have to be dealing with the issues that are out there. And our partnerships are everything. Our partnerships have made a difference. That's how this all works. And you don't have to sacrifice accountability to achieve justice. I think that we've been able to do so many things here in the city. From moving our office around the corner, we moved maybe a quarter of a mile from 32 Belmont to 166 Main Street, but we moved about 75 years into the future. And it allowed us also to bring the state police who were assigned to the DA's office. I brought them up from Middleborough. So now the state police who used to be on 495 about half an hour away from here, they're right there. And they work with the Brockton people. And I'm telling you, if you've ever seen when something terrible happens and you see the men and women work together and how they work together, it really is inspiring. And that's why we have an 80 to 85% clearance rate on our homicides. One homicide's too many. But when we deal with those homicides and we deal with the victims and we let them know that people care and people want to make a difference in the world, I think that makes all the difference. I was born here in Brockton. My father had a plumbing place on Pleasant Street for 20 years with my brother. I had a law practice here on Pleasant Street at Jerry Noonan's building on 555 Pleasant for almost a decade. My grandmother grew up in the Campello section. And although I grew up in West Bridgewater, and I saw some of you at the West Bridgewater 200th anniversary last week, I grew up in that little town. I understand, I believe, Brockton as best as I can. And I want to thank each and every one of you for the work and the sacrifice that you do as city councilors here in the city of Brockton. It is not an easy job. I know that. And I appreciate the work that you do, and I appreciate the challenges that we face, and I truly believe that together we're going to continue to make a difference, and we can continue to drive these numbers down and help the people we can help, and at the same time, making sure we can make it a safer, a better community. So I thank you for listening to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Azak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, DA Cruz. This is really important, and this is a lot more than what I was expecting when I asked you to come before us, so this is really amazing. Thank you to Maria DeCanto from your office. She's your Director of Diversity and Inclusion and CAC of Operations. So thank you, Maria. I know she helped put all this for us. When I was at that meeting way back in 2015, and I remember the residents wanted statistics. So this is a big, we have statistics now. We're making it available to them. I know also our Brockton Police Department, we hired a statistics person. So I appreciate the numbers. I appreciate the information as you know, as well as giving all the counselors, you know, you're preparing this. This is really important. You have a lot of great partnerships in the Brockton community as well as throughout Plymouth County, and that's important. I know you have a great relationship with our Brockton Police Department. So I want to do my part in getting this information out to the residents, so that's why I felt it was really important that you come before us. So thank you again, and I'll leave it to my colleagues that have questions.
Thank you for the invite. And I neglected not to mention Maria. She does a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Farwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. District Attorney, my comments are not only as a councillor at large, but as a resident of Brockton and Plymouth County. And I truly appreciate the fact that while I'm sure your office isn't perfect, we all have warts, all of us up here do, whether we want to admit it or not, you've always run a nonpartisan office, and all of the issues that come before you, whether it's opioid issues, prosecution of serious crime, they're not Democrat, Republican issues, they're not liberal, conservative issues. And I think it speaks well of your office and the talent that you bring in there, that you go by the facts and the evidence and the circumstances, you look at the totality of the circumstances, and then you choose to go forward. Thank the Lord you're not one of these district attorneys who says, well, you know, I don't agree with that crime, so we're never going to prosecute it. I mean, if you don't like a law, change it in the legislature, but I'm always, when I read in the national media about district attorneys who decide, I'm simply not going to prosecute that, or I'm never going to ask for a life sentence because I don't think it's appropriate. Well, those decisions really should be made by legislators and not district attorneys. So I appreciate all you do. This is not meant to be a political speech. As a resident of the city, the district attorney, while you don't get a lot of publicity, it's an important position. There is one issue that I have noticed over the years that I wanted to ask you to comment on, and that's guns. I like the statistics, I like the trend, but it just seems to me in my lifetime we're seeing more and more guns get into society, especially in the hands of young people. So I guess my question to you is, are you and the other DAs, but you specifically, are we able to find out where are they coming from? How are they getting into the hands of people here in Brockton? Because it's really a miracle that we haven't had an innocent person cut down by a stray bullet, as has happened in other jurisdictions. So talk to us a little bit about what are we doing, and what are your thoughts about trying to trace the origin of guns, and maybe even have a special squad at the police department that tracks firearms. But it's a real concern to me.
Yeah, me too. And part of PSN, part of the Project Safe Neighborhood grant that we're dealing with now, which really is subsumed Safe Streets and with grant-wise, is following the ballistics of the firearms that are occurring and making sure that we follow the casings that are found at a scene of a crime. So therefore, we can try to figure out, you know, if we find casings at one scene, because as you know, when something terrible happens, there's no witnesses. You show up, there's casings, maybe, because last time they pick up their metal and their brass. And you try to follow those statistics and those ballistics where they're coming from. And many times you can find them out that they're coming from Boston, that they're coming from other places, or a gun was stolen from somewhere at that point. So I think that, you know, we've been trying to do that as best as we can. We're trying to get the crime guns off the street, because that's what we're dealing with. And you're right, there are too many of them out there. So what we try to do is, obviously, we try to prosecute the individuals that have those firearms, and at the same time, we work in conjunction with our federal partners to see whether or not we can get trafficking allegations against individuals who are buying guns and bringing them here. You know, every now and then you have some, like we had a case a few years back where these 3 kids from Tennessee showed up with an armload of guns. And they don't have any gun laws down in Tennessee, and they show up in Brockton to sell them. And they end up selling them. They all get arrested. And some of them were high-capacity weapons that could certainly hurt a lot of people. In trying to follow the guns, I agree it's very important. We work with the FBI. We work with the NIBIN people in trying to find those guns out, and we continue to work on that. And I'm hopeful that, you know, we're going to be able to get those guns off and make sure we can expedite the gun cases. COVID slowed us down quite a bit, and the juries were closed for more or less a year in the court system, and that's really bottled us down a little bit. Then right when we get going again in probably August of 21, we started doing our trials again with juries. That was the problem, getting juries in. Even our grand jury, that shut down our grand jury, and that's a huge problem. The grand jury, for those of you that don't know, the grand jury is approximately 24 people who are selected to serve 3 months here in the county of Plymouth, all from our county. And our grand jury sits here in Plymouth. And when they couldn't sit, if there's a terrible case that happens, I know as a prosecutor, and I know as a criminal trial lawyer for the last 37 years, that you have to get people's testimony in the court immediately. And so you want to get it under oath. You want to get it into the grand jury where people are sworn under oath to tell the truth. If I don't have a grand jury and I'm not going to get one for 2 weeks, that's a long time. That's a lifetime in the history of a case. So how do we make sure we can freeze that testimony, get truth from people at that time, and also at the same time corroborate and verify? Because many times, in order to come up with an 80 to 85% clearance rate of homicides, you have to deal with people who they're probably not sitting at your dinner table. You know, these are individuals who are out there in that life, in that world, and you have to deal with them, or else you're not going to solve those cases. And I think that now that we're kind of back, we did, I think, 5 or 6 homicide trials from September to December. Then the trial court shut down trials again. And now they just started up again last week. Right now, we impaneled a homicide trial down in Plymouth. A lot of our Brockton cases now go down to Plymouth because Plymouth is a newer court and it's more secure, and they moved a lot of our pretrials, which is great. However, a realistic problem is that there's not enough lawyers. And my lawyers may have a 10 o'clock call here in Brockton, but they have a 2 o'clock call down in Plymouth. And although I can have people cover for each other, the pool of defense lawyers that actually do the real serious crimes is so incredibly small right now that those men or women, they can't make the trek back and forth. And everybody's exhausted with Zoom. So I think that we're doing the best that we can. And I agree with you with the guns, and I think that we're going in the right direction. But like I said, it always seems you're just one bad night away from something. You know, it can happen. It can happen in any area. It can happen in under-resourced communities. And that's why I think it's important for people to see these numbers here, because unfortunately, notwithstanding all the good things that you're all doing here, many times you don't hear about it. And I think people should hear about it. Look at Main Street in Brockton right now. Think back to 20 years ago, what Main Street in Brockton was, and look what it is now. Look, you have Massasoit Community College, you have the unemployment just moved down the street, you have the DA's office sitting there now, you have a brand new brewery being built, you have Brockton Neighborhood Health, you've got a really good area down there, a viable entity that's down there. And I think the word needs to get out about that. All the residences are being built on West Elm Street, on Crescent Street, incredible. Brockton is a good place. People need to understand that. And that's why it's important for us and for you to talk about this, to understand.
And I think social media plays a key part in kind of highlighting a lot of the criminal activities that we see happening in the community. I remember a year or so ago I said that Brockton suffers from a perception of crime. And I think the numbers that you actually showed us in terms of reductions when you're looking at violent crimes being down 20%. To me, the most significant out of all the reductions came in the areas of juvenile court cases. I mean, when you look at it, 48%. It means that young people are doing the right thing and are not ending up in the courts, according to what I'm seeing here. Right. So these are the kinds of stuff that I think, and I think you highlighted that in terms of us, not necessarily dwelling, not that we should stay away from the negativity, but also not dwell too much in the fact that when somebody brings up something for me to say, you know, but what, statistically, juvenile crime in our community is down 48%. And that's not numbers that I'm making up. These are true numbers. You know, it's not something that we're doing for campaign purposes. Those are true factual numbers. And I don't think we do a very good amount of publicizing the positives within our community. So my question to you was, and I got a couple more that I just wanted to get through, how do these numbers that you just put up here compare to, I mean, the numbers as far as the reduction is concerned? It's apples and oranges or whichever way you want to go. Actually, I think I say apples and pineapples, but the numbers that, how do our numbers compare to communities of about the same size as we are in terms of reduction, not in terms of the overall crime?
Well, I mean, I didn't do an extensive study on outside communities, except for the fact that I think it's a fair statement to say that as you look at what's going on in our country right now, and you look at spikes in violent crime, you look at spikes in homicides and shootings and really unabated crime against innocent people who are walking down the street, to say that our numbers are going the other direction, while at the same time, the members that are in jail, those numbers are going down also. That, to me, it's those two things together. It is the downward trend of the crime, and it is the downward trend of the people that are in custody. That shows me that we're doing something right here, that we're smarter with what we're doing, and we're helping people getting back into the community. You're not going to be batting 1,000, but you are going to be batting 500 or so. And I've been to those programs. I've gone down to the jail. I've spoken to people after they've signed their waivers because they can't talk to me because I'm the DA. But I will go into those rooms and talk to these guys about the issues and the challenges that they face. So I think that our numbers here in Brockton, and I've looked at them on a countywide level, Brockton is our biggest community in Plymouth County. It's roughly 106,000 people. The next biggest community we have is Plymouth, which is approximately 75 or 80,000 people, and it's a much bigger area. Brockton is very compact. Plymouth is a huge area, of a lot of it's, forestry and woods and things such as that. But it's a much bigger area, so it's really hard to define. I think that, though, when you look at our numbers and you look at the direction that these trends are going, that doesn't just happen. That happens because all these different groups, the police, the fire, the EMTs, the people who are all working together to get on the front end of the problems, and at the same time working on the back end with accountability in the middle. That, to me, is really the hallmark of where we're at right now. And I think you have to also look at the numbers. You can't look, I don't think you can look at anything for a year or two. I mean, that can be a spike, that's an aberration, who knows? We're talking numbers, we're going back 7, 8 years back to Safe Streets, or even the PSN numbers are going back, the jail numbers are going back to 2010. And when you look at those charts going down, to me, that says an awful lot that we're doing the right thing. And I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to continue to do that. And like I said, I cannot say enough about the public safety here in Brockton. The men and women that work here do a remarkable job. And right now, police officers are challenged as never before. And I think they're doing a remarkable job, and we continue to work with them and make sure that we can do our job together and make the place safer.
We also have had a few homicides, for instance, in the city in the last couple of years or so. How is the rates of solving some of these homicides? Are they pretty high, or?
Well, like I said, I call the clearance rate is for us is anywhere between 80 and 85%. Last year we had 9 homicides in the county. We had 7 in the city. I think we cleared, which means there's either an arrest or there's a resolution in that the individual that committed the crime is passed or is died one way or the other. So we resolved 5 of those. And what I see many times is that, especially when you're dealing with some of the crime that when you show up and there's nobody around, they're not going to resolve overnight. Here, this year, we've had 2 homicides. We've had one individual has been arrested, and the balance of that case is still under investigation. And we have the other homicide that occurred on Ash Street a week or 2 back that is still under investigation. I am always confident that, we may not get there today or tomorrow, but we will get there. And I think our numbers show that. And by working, once again, the police here, and now they have such a remarkable job dealing with phones, dealing with the vehicles, dealing with cameras that are all over the place now. And it's not necessarily the police officers. People have cameras on their home and on their commercial places. And you can get that information. And plus, it's old-fashioned police work. So when you see something terrible happens here in the city and you see those men and women working, I mean, I've sat in those meetings. I've talked at those meetings and listened to the Brockton guys, the state guys, the federal guys, as we sit around and talk about the players that we're dealing with down here. It's remarkable. It really is. And that's why they get solved. There's no, it's all about me. There's no, I'm looking to get my name in the newspaper. It's all about how do we get to the resolution? How do we keep people safe? How do we let people know what's going on? Part of my job is to let people understand that, there's not some crazy killer out there. Something terrible happened. But it's usually not a random act of violence. It is something that's terrible. It's a marked something. It's a marked kill or whatever it's going to be. Part of my job is to show up at these scenes and try to put the fire out and let people understand that there are professional men and women who are working very hard to make sure that we can resolve this case. And then once it gets resolved, and I tell the people in my office, that, we have to do our job at the same time. We have to comply with the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, the U.S. Constitution. We have to do all that stuff in advance, because you have to think that once that case, if somebody gets arrested, that case is pretty much set in stone then. You're not going to be in a position where you can get much more information. So therefore, you have to make sure you get your affidavits, you go to the courts, you get them approved by the judges, you go out, search warrants, whatever they may be. And the work is truly remarkable. And it's not like television. It's not exciting. It's not like, Law and Order, which is, crime to conviction in 60 minutes with commercials. It's men and women doing the hard work. And it's really impressive. And I think that's why we have such a high clearance rate. When you compare other urban communities, the clearance rate is 35%, 40%. That's not that way in our county.
What about the community itself? Have you noticed that the community has been a lot more responsive in terms of coming forward, assisting you in your investigation of criminal activities? Has that changed, or it's still pretty much about the same?
I think it's pretty constant. I think that you always have some people that want to come forward and help, and you always have people that are scared. And the question is, can you make somebody feel comfortable that they're not going to hear? Do we have to move somebody? We do that quite a bit to make sure people can remain safe. And then sometimes you have people who just tell you to go pound sand. And how do you get around that? And when people are married, they have marital privileges, so you can't put them in. You can't put them in the grand jury. You'll put people in the grand jury, and quite honestly, people will say, I don't recall, I don't recall, I don't recall. And then you're kind of stuck with it. That's why sometimes there's a logjam on these cases. You know, how do you get to the end? And at the same time, I'm not interested in getting people indicted. Indictment is probable cause. It's a lower level. My question always is, and I was a defense lawyer for 12 years, can you prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt? How do we do that? And, you know, and reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. I always compare it to like ivory soap. It's like 99 to 44 100ths. You know, it's the highest mark there is. Can we prove that case? And in our office, if you're going to green light a homicide, it's got to go through me. And I'm going to ask my questions. And they know that they're going to answer the questions. And if they're not there, go back and we'll come back later on. Slow and steady wins the race. And I think that's why we have a higher conviction rate, and that's why we have a higher clearance rate. And I'm proud of the fact that they do a great job. Everything doesn't work. Listen, we're talking the criminal justice world. We're dealing with humans. Humans make mistakes. Everybody does. Nobody's perfect. We do the very best we can and go forward from there.
Lastly, for me, a couple of years ago when we were discussing the legalization of marijuana here in the community, there was a great number of folks that felt that with the legalization of marijuana that you would see a severe spike in drug crimes. In your opinion, has the legalization of marijuana brought an increase in drug crimes in our city?
I think it's brought an increase in driving crimes, which are unfortunately one of the things. When I was going out a few years back, whatever year that was, when that was getting legalized, one of my biggest issues was that we weren't ready for it. That we have, you know, for alcohol, we have breathalyzers, we have blood tests that can happen, we have a certified number that you can use. Marijuana, we don't have any of that stuff. So other than a police officer pulling a vehicle over, they see a car weaving, maybe there's a car accident, and they make initial observations of somebody, they're unsteady on their feet, they smell an odor of marijuana. It's a challenge to prove those cases. I applaud the fact that the police officers do their job, though, because people say to me, well, you're relying on a police officer. Well, yeah, we've been relying on police officers forever, because the police officers are the guys that are and gals out on the street, and they have to make a determination and an assessment. Am I going to let this person go and drive down the road and potentially hurt somebody else? Or am I going to do my job and make the determination that I believe this individual is under the influence of intoxicating liquor, of drugs, whatever it might be? If you don't have access to people's blood, which you don't normally do, makes those cases really challenging. And many times, you know, the people are found not guilty. That doesn't mean the police officers did a bad job or the DAs did a bad job. That means the challenges that we face are really difficult. When I was a young prosecutor and when Brockton cases, the 6-person cases used to go down to Wareham, which was 35 years ago. Now they're here in Brockton. And I remember trying a bunch of drunk driving cases. And I remember I tried a case, and it was a typical OUI case, operating under the influence case. And we did our case. The guy had refused the breathalyzer, so that means I can't mention it. You can't say the word breathalyzer in those cases. So therefore, the case went to the jury. And the jury came back, like within 5 minutes, and said, did the Commonwealth offer John Doe the breathalyzer? So now we're in the courtroom. I go, Judge, you got to tell him. Yeah, we offered him the breathalyzer. And he refused it. And the judge, rightfully so, because of our case law here in Massachusetts, said, I can't tell him that. Said, I can't mention that word. So then the judge said, you have to make your determination based upon the evidence that you heard during the course of the trial. They went back out. 5 minutes later, they come back. They find the guy not guilty. And then the jury's all looking for me. And they're going to tell me how I screwed up. And they said, Cruz, you screwed up. I said, I didn't screw up. I go, we can't talk about the breath test, the refusal of the breath test. And I think the challenges that we face in many cases, you can't talk about refusals, you can't talk about people's records during the underlying course itself. Like some people say, you know, somebody may be charged with 10 breaking and enterings. Well, that's great, but if you try in one case, all the jury's going to hear about is that one. And then if they get convicted, and a second and sub portion goes on in the case, then that other stuff comes in, but you've got to get over the rail for the first one first. And that makes it a challenge sometimes. And you know what? Defendants have a lot of rights. That's great. You know, we do the very best we can. We face a lot of challenges, a lot of the rulings from the court, but we go forward and put our best foot forward. And I applaud, once again, the police and the fire and the EMTs and the doctors that we all have to deal with in these cases, because a lot of them, they're not lawyers. And they don't understand. I mean, I understand that there's a very good chance that we're not going to be able to put in evidence of guilt. And many times things are going to be deemed to be more prejudicial than probative. And I always say, well, yeah, of course it's more prejudice than probative. That's why I want to put it in, because it shows he did it. But in actuality, we're not allowed to do that. So we don't. And we go forward from there. We make our pitch, the judge makes the call.
Well, Mr. DA, thank you very much for coming, and please continue to do what you do for our city. I want to thank my colleague here from Ward 7 for bringing you here, because this to me is important in terms of those stats and those numbers that some of us that live in this community, work in this community, once in a while it's nice to have black and white information that we can share with our folks. That just isn't something that I'm making up, which is to me very important that we continue to have that. And please come back and see us perhaps in a few more months so that.
Well, when we get the 21 numbers too, we'll certainly provide those to you also.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor D'Agostino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, DA Cruz, for being here this evening and for the information that you've provided. I just have a couple of questions. First, I'm glad by these numbers, right? Everything's moving in a really positive direction for the city, and I think we can't say that loudly enough and enough times. So that's really great to see. I was curious on a few items. I noticed there was some numbers here about active inmates are down substantially from 2012 to well, it looks like 2022. How, so I assume buried in there is the answer about, I always say it wrong, recidivism. Thank you. All right, and I mean, what are the programs in place so that when folks go in, they pay their debt to society, they come out, we make sure that the opportunities and the programs are there to set them up to become a contributing member of society and not end up back in the prison system?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reentry programs at the House of Correction have really been a really big factor on the back end. And like I said earlier, the programs that they have down there for the men that have to volunteer if they want these programs, and they do, because lots of them, the most important thing in their lives are, a lot of them have kids. How can I come back out into the real world? And 99.9% of the people in the House of Correction are coming back into the real world. And a lot of them don't have education, they don't have training. Myself and the last few mayors have been doing a Corey-friendly job fair at the War Memorial Building for the last 3-4 years or so. And I'm talking real jobs. IBEW comes down here, the Craft Group comes down here, and offering jobs to people and not worrying about people's records. We continue to work with PAC, with Jamal Gooding down here in the city of Brockton. And PAC is a program that Jamal does an incredible job with. I think it's something like in the last 3 or 4 years, helping 1,000 people get back on their feet. And when people do have whatever the problems may be, whether the educational programs, the anger management issues, drug issues, parenting issues, they teach that down the jail also. How do you deal with, when your kid's driving you crazy? How do you deal with that? And those are, I think, very good programs. And I think as a result of that, now, although I don't have the numbers to show it per se, the lack of recidivism is another factor to the numbers going down and the number of people who are doing their time at the House of Correction. DOC, which is the other set of numbers of the Department of Correction, that's state prison, and those numbers are fresh today because we called the DOC today, and we called the House of Correction today. That's how I know that as of this morning, there were 79 individuals doing time at the Plymouth County House of Correction. And I know that there's 6,000 and some number in the state system, but which is down almost 50% in the last decade or so. And you should understand many times that the people that are in the Department of Correction, in the state system, most of those guys, I'd say 50%, homicides, murderers, rapists, the serious stuff, the real serious stuff. Not that other crimes aren't serious. When people talk about minor crimes, I think if you're the victim in any crime, no crime is minor. And that's why I think that victims have a right to be heard, and that's why that I think that victims should be heard, and that's why we have our victim witness programs, and we have our victim witness advocates who try to. Most people have no familiarity with the criminal justice system, and they're walking in the door, and they really don't know anything about it. And that's why I tell the lawyers that work for me, and we have 55 lawyers or so, said you have to be at your best, and you have to tell people the truth, the unvarnished truth, because you don't want to lead somebody down the path to think something's going to happen. This is a challenging world, and people need to hear that from you in a nice way. Here's what we've got. Here's the way we're going to deal with it. But here are the challenges that we have. because we're going to have challenges. In any case, whether they be somebody made statements that somebody's alleging they were unlawfully obtained, or a search where they found something and they'd be unlawfully taken, there's always going to be motions and things along those lines where people are going to make those allegations, and we have to fight to say that, no, those are good. And then the judge will make the call. You know, I don't make the call. The judge makes the call on those things, then we make a determination if we're going to appeal something. So, you know, there's always, every case is different, and I try to tell the people in our office, we have a responsibility to be at our best when sometimes people are seeing the worst, and especially when somebody's lost somebody that they love and they don't understand. And, you know, they'll come to me, I want the death penalty, and, well, we don't have the death penalty. You know, we don't have that. I tell people the truth, and I think we're better for it in the long run by dealing with them at the outset and taking them through and showing them all of our cards on the table as we go forward.
In some of these numbers, too, I was just wondering, you know, whether it's the violent crime numbers or larceny, it doesn't matter what the category is. Do you happen to know how many of the offenders, I guess, for lack of a better term, are repeat?
Our recidivists?
Yeah.
People, I don't have that number per se.
Okay.
Are you talking about in the House of Correction, or are you talking about Department of Correction, or are you talking about?
Just in general, like,
Yeah.
you know, looking at violent crime. Like,
Counsel, we just looked at the numbers of the people that were in there right now. If we had to drill down on it, we could certainly find that out as to how many people are in there that are repeat offenders. Trust me when I say this, in Massachusetts, many times, you have to be a repeat customer before you go into jail.
right. Okay. And then you talked about the opioid crisis earlier, and I was curious, trying to figure out how I want to word this. I mean, it seems like, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new opioid that comes out. There's a new, like, this thing is just continues on and on. And you mentioned that they were working on something in Washington. Can you talk a little more about what's being done to try to get a handle on this thing? I mean,
I think every jurisdiction is dealing with things a little bit differently. You know, so when I look at what we're doing here, whether it be Plymouth County Outreach, is where when there's a non-fatal overdose in Plymouth County, we have an MOU between all 27 police chiefs in our county, and plus Bridgewater State University, and I think in Massasoit also, so that if there's a non-fatal overdose in Plymouth County, if somebody, say, overdoses in Plymouth, and the person's from Brockton, within 12 to 24 hours, there'll be a recovery coach and a plainclothes policeman bringing information to that person's house. Because one of the biggest issues that you continue to deal with the opioid crisis is the stigma of being somebody who's addicted to substances. So by bringing that stuff to people's houses, I think that's been very helpful. And when you look at our fatal opiate overdoses over the course of the last 3 years, in 2019, the number was roughly like 140, I believe it was. In 2020, during COVID, the numbers went up to 165, and last year in 121, they went back down like another 30 fatal overdoses. And I think one of the reasons why it went up during COVID was for Plymouth County Outreach, the police officers couldn't go to the homes anymore because of COVID. They couldn't bring those resources. So although a spike went up about 30 deaths in our county, which is, you know, and primarily it's dealing with certain sections of our county have the problem more than others. And with opioids, there are drugs everywhere. So as we watch the numbers go up and down, I think we're level to where we are right now. The reason why we understand and we're dealing with, I get all the numbers for the unattended deaths of people who die here in Plymouth County, people who die not in a hospital, not in a nursing home. But if somebody passes at their home, say they just don't wake up, and the local police are called, the local police will call the state police who are assigned to the DA's office. They will go out and make sure there's nothing suspicious. And 99 times out of 100, there's nothing suspicious. Somebody just passed away. But they'll go make a determination and see what there is there. So we get those numbers, and that's how I have the numbers from PCO and also from the fatal opioid overdoses in our county. Our numbers are down, and like I said, people now are trying to, when I go and I talk to DAs across the country about PCO and having 27 police chiefs agree to something. They go, how do you get 27 police chiefs to agree to today's Tuesday? Never mind that they're going to actually do something. It's going to cost them money, time, resources. The chiefs have been great. And I think that's been very helpful to us to try to drive the numbers down.
Well, in the fact that this stuff keeps ending up on our streets, right? I mean, is it a federal issue? You know, I mean, because it just keeps coming. Is it a federal issue? Is it a Beacon Hill issue? Is there something that we as a local city can do more to try and...
Well, I mean, I think providing resources is a big step, and I also think that holding people who are accountable, because we have a lot of the people who are the traffickers that are out there that are selling drugs, they're not users. People should understand that users, for the most part, aren't going to jail for using. They may be committing another crime in order to do their use. But the people who are out there that are selling this poison that are killing people, those are the people that I want to pursue. Those are the people that we go after, and if we can, and we proved one guy, we convicted him after trial of manslaughter, of providing deadly fentanyl, not a user, providing fentanyl to people who are overdosing, especially at a time when you're dealing with people who are fighting this substance abuse and people who are in and out of rehab. Rehab usually doesn't work the first couple times, and some people never works at all, notwithstanding best efforts. Sometimes it's too much to overcome. So I think in working with the other DAs, we all talk about this. We work in conjunction, with the AG also, and we work with our federal partners too, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and trying to make sure that we can get the people who are killing people off the streets and getting these drugs off. And you hope that's going to have a change, but regarding the drugs themselves, the drugs are getting tweaked all the time. Whether we're lucky so far, we don't really have a meth problem. I probably shouldn't have said that, but we don't. But that has come across America, and when I talk to prosecutors across America that have dealt with it, it's really bad. It's really, really bad, and it's a real challenge. We don't have it yet, and I think that for a while we slowed it down. The federal government made Sudafed, which was an element of it. They made it you had to buy it over the counter for a while. So they slowed things down, but they're always figuring things out. These chemists, for lack of a better word. But now the thing that has concerned me is the new I can't say this word, protonitazine and isotonitazine. Those are the two new opioids that are down in Washington, D.C. right now that I am fearful of because they're stronger than fentanyl, and carfentanil is probably 50 times stronger than fentanyl, and that really concerns me that there's more and more coming. And is that going to put us in a position where maybe the naloxone's not going to work? Who knows? And that's a challenge that we're going to have to deal with.
Right. And I know you don't have the answer right here in front of you. Obviously, if you did, you would have already done it. But again, you just mentioned here's another opioid that's already in D.C. And how do we keep this from getting on our streets? And I know there's no easy answer to that. But all right. So I wanted to also ask. You mentioned when you were talking to some of the other counselors, safe streets a few times. Can you talk a little more about that?
About Safe Streets?
Safe Streets and what that is?
Safe Streets is really an offshoot of the original Project Safe Neighborhood, which was a federal grant that we got. It's got to be like in 08, 09. And really what it was probably one of the greatest grants we dealt with because it actually brought, for once, people to the table. Not just the DAs. It brought local, state, federal people together, talking across a table on a monthly basis, and also putting on phone contact with stuff so people knew who the players were, because most times these cases aren't confined to Plymouth County, it's not confined to Norfolk County. You have people going in and out of different counties. So when that federal program ended and the funding ended for the police overtime and things such as that, and when there was an uptick in crime in the city of Brockton, I thought it was important, and I talked to the chiefs at that time, they thought it was important that we do it together without the money. So we started doing Safe Streets meetings back at the Arnone School, which is where we've done them historically for a while. And we've done Safe Streets pretty much all throughout the school year at the Arnone School. What we were doing pre-COVID, though, and I think this is important, when it gets back up and running again after COVID, I think we need to bounce it around. We did it at the VFW on Quincy Street once, and it was interesting to me is that you'd see different people from that section of the county, of the city, that you wouldn't see at the Arnone School. So what I want to do, and I've told my people, I said, when it's up and running again, let's find different spots so people can come to us and they can talk to us. And you're doing a good job when people come and they complain about potholes. and you see the various spikes. When crime is spiking, people are coming and they're legitimately concerned, and they have somebody that they can talk to, and they have somebody there that also we can show them to, here's the Brockton Police, here's the state police, talk to them. Well, let's see what we can do with that, if anything. And they've been really good that way. So I think it's really a communication thing. And then after Safe Streets was up and running, PSN came back again, and we applied for it again, and we're really lucky that by working with the Brockton Police and our grants and getting our numbers and our data together, that's what's key for grants, is getting the data put together that you submit in those grants. Because we've all been keeping good stats and things such as that, we were able to become one of 14 spots in the country that became the new PSN spot here for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So now we were able to get additional resources, and that's where we're dealing with the guns once again. It's through PSN, and it's working with our federal partners and all the other programs that we're dealing with. So we're always trying to keep our eyes open to see what's coming, and it's a challenge. And I tell my grant people all the time, let's see what we can find, what resources can we bring to the community, and what can we do to do our job better. And we don't always get all of our grants. We swing a lot, and every now and then we get a couple hits, and that's great. But they do a tremendous job, and I think that we've been successful because of that. But it's really, I think if I had to summarize Safe Streets and PSN into one word, it's communication. It's better communication between people who have information. And when you sit in these rooms and you talk about John Doe or Jane Smith, they go, oh, yeah, I know that guy. And then there's a conversation about that. And to me, it's just been, you would think that would be basic stuff that would be working all the time, but it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes, unfortunately, there's a natural adversity between state and federal. And you try to, when I first became DA many years ago, it was 6 weeks after 9/11. We had a great relationship with the feds back then. And then over time, it kind of waned a little bit. And now it gets back and forth, and I think we have a good relationship now, and I hope that we do, and always trying to talk and trying to, once again, no pride of authorship. There's a problem, let's deal with it, and do the best that we can with it.
Well, thank you very much for being here, and I thank, the Brockton Police, State Police for their efforts and all the other, agencies you partner with. So again, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Tavares?
Yes. Hi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Basically, I learned so much today. You provided such a huge and big information, which I learned a lot. And we are so lucky to have you in Brockton. I have just one question. My question is, how do you advertise this program?
How do I advertise all the various programs?
Yes.
We do press releases. We have our website in the office. We have a Facebook post for Project Neighborhood. But notwithstanding all that, I guess I'm not good at promoting it. I try. I go out and I talk about it as I go out there, but many times, for whatever reason, the media doesn't pick up on it. The only thing many times the media picks up on is when something terrible happens. And that's unfortunate. Because, as you've seen tonight, there's a lot of good things going on here, and you guys know better than anybody. There's a lot of good things going on in the city of Brockton. People need to understand that. So I pledge to you that I will try to do a better job of promoting it and talking about what we do, and I would ask all of you also to try to help us get the word out that there's a lot of good things here. And if there's something that I haven't answered tonight, and I know there probably you have questions after we leave, we're available. We're right next door. We can always come over and talk about whatever it is we're doing.
All right. Thank you again. And then I do have a word meeting on Thursday. I hope you show up to provide some information for the community. And thank you again, and just keep it up. If anything I can do, I definitely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Councilor. Is there a motion?
Well,
Oh, sorry. Councilor Azak.
okay, so thank you again, and just to answer through the chair to my colleague, Councilor Tavares, for the Safe Streets meeting, I know Maria has done a great job about emailing us throughout the years. She would always keep us updated and informed whenever you were having a meeting. So we receive emails from your office, regularly whenever you were having them. And so once again, thank you. I appreciate you and all that your office has done for us with this information. With that, I make a motion to send this favorably back to the full City Council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? All right. All opposed? None? All right. Thank you. Motion
Thank you very much. I
passes.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. Hands down the best DA I've ever worked with.
You're 2 years old, I mean, come on.
Isn't he the only one you've ever worked with?
All right, are there any moments of personal privilege? Counselor Azak, followed by Counselor Nicastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to mention while the DA was speaking that, you know, there's a lot of partnerships, and there's a partnership that we have with our newspaper, The Enterprise, and I wanted to announce that we have a new reporter in the room with us, Mr. Chris Helms, Enterprise reporter. Thank you. It's nice to see you in here. We've, and, you know, we understand you have to report what's going on, but sometimes
Let's
it's
see
good
what he
to report.
writes first, and then we can
Well,
clap.
I've read a few of his, he's already been reporting, so it's really great. So thank you for being here, Chris. So on a sad note, I wanted to just announce and take a moment of silence for Mrs. Pat Hool, who passed away a few days ago. Pat was an amazing lady who gave a lot to the city of Brockton. She served as the president of the DW Fields Park Association for many years. She was involved with the Garden Club, just to name a few, and she's going to be greatly missed. I wanted to send, you know, our thoughts and prayers to her family, and there aren't any, no services have been planned as of yet, so when they will be, I will announce them. But I want to take a moment of silence for her, please. May she rest in peace. Amen. On a different note, two more announcements. First of all, congratulations to Bishop Tony Branch, who serves as chairman of our Southeastern Regional Vocational Technical High School. He has been appointed by Governor Baker to serve on the Governor's Federal Funds Equity and Accountability Review Panel. So we have a lot of people in the community doing really great things. We also have the Dominican Republic flag raising. It's next Monday, February 28th, 4 p.m. here at City Hall, so hope to see everybody there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Nicastro.
Thank you. Good evening. Last Wednesday, I joined Mayor Sullivan, the head of Constituent Services, John Messia, and Council President Lally, excuse me, at a celebration of the 200th anniversary of the founding of the town of West Bridgewater. West Bridgewater is the community that's closest to the south side of Brockton, which I represent, Ward 4. And I just want to wish everyone from West Bridgewater my very best wishes. Thrilled that your community is 200 years old. It was a lovely, lovely event that we went to. Actually, District Attorney Cruz spoke at it. He is a West Bridgewater native. So I just want people from West Bridgewater to know Brockton was there, and we're happy for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Tavares.
Yes, actually, I'm just going to say I have a ward meeting on Thursday, February 24, 6 p.m. at 135 Belmont Street, Brockton. For, you know, all Brockton, if you do want to go. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys all.
Thank you. Good to know. I'm writing it down right now. All right. Any other moments of personal privilege? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you.